Hello, BookTube. Welcome to Weekly Reads. I had an okay reading week. I read 2 books, and I also had a decent viewing week. Every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I try to watch something on Netflix. I might start watching like the Amazon Prime stuff. Which I have Amazon Prime, but I never actually use any of the Amazon Video or anything like that. Anyway, and also need to do CBS All Access and Hulu because I have all of those. So let's begin with what I've watched, and then I'll touch on the books, and then get on to what I'll be doing this weekend and next week. So on Friday, I watched Full Metal Alchemist and Circus of Books, and then on Saturday I watched Bleach and Rim of the World, and then on Sunday I watched Ice Fantasy. So beginning with Rim of the World, it's about a group of kids who are going to summer camp when an alien invasion happens, and these kids are key to beating back the alien invasion. And the movie was crap. It was just crap. Circus of Books, it's about a gay bookstore that specialized in pornographic items. It was interesting. I quite liked it. I thought it was a bit amateurish at points, but a lot of that particular genre of documentary where the filmmaker is front and center as the interviewer, as the narrator, can at times be a bit amateurish. And I thought there were bits of it in Circus of Books, although I really, really enjoyed it. It was fantastic. And then let's talk about the manga live-action adaptations. I liked them both. So Full Metal Alchemist is about the Elric brothers who, in an attempt to bring back their mother who had died, they perform a forbidden ritual, which results in Edward losing his arm and his brother his body. And to save his brother, Edward sacrifices his leg to bring back his brother's soul and inscribes it into a suit of armor. Or it might be the leg was sacrificed in the ritual to bring his mother back, and the arm was sacrificed to save Alphonse. Anyway, and so they become, Edward then becomes a state alchemist in the kingdom and the country of Amestris, and he and his brother pursue the Philosopher's Stone in hopes that it can restore them. On the journey, they uncover a conspiracy in the upper echelons of the Amestrian government that will result in the utter destruction of this country and the sacrifice of all of its people at the behest of a group of artificial humans called the homunculi. And so the film version of Fullmetal Alchemist covers the first fourth of the series. The manga lasted for like 21, or maybe more than 21 volumes. It was like mid-20s, I think, volume count, and about 100 and some odd chapters. So the film covers the first few arcs where the manga is filling itself out before it really discovers the main thrust of the narrative. I liked it, but it is too busy. There is too much going on. I think the film would have worked better had the homunculi been more of, say, a sequel hook or a post-credit scene, and the focus being more on the Father Carnello, Show Tucker, the pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone before they realize that ultimately using the Philosopher's Stone is unethical. But I thought the performances were pretty good. I'm not too fond of the interpretation of Winry. She's an automobile manufacturer who manufactured Edward's prosthesis. That's why he's called the Full Metal Alchemist. And not too fond of how Colonel Mustang is depicted either. Bleach, I really enjoyed. So Bleach, again, is one of these long-running manga. I think it lasted over 500 chapters and 70-ish volumes. So Bleach is about a young high school student in our world called Ichigo Kurosaki, who has the ability to detect ghosts and communicate with them. And one day he meets a young woman, or what appears to be a young woman, named Rukia Kuchiki, who is a Soul Reaper, Shinigami, a Grim Reaper, during one of her missions. And she's distracted and wounded and is forced to transfer some of her powers, or her power, to Ichigo to transform him into a temporary Shinigami so he can fulfill her missions. And he goes on a series of adventures that, begin to meander as the series goes on. So the movie adapts the first few volumes, culminating in the conflict with the Hollow, called the Grand Fisher, who attacked Ichigo as a child and killed his mother. And honestly, I think if you want to do a live-action adaptation of a long-running manga, this is how you do it. I mean, it was concise, it was easily a standalone, with a sequel hook, just phenomenally done. And I liked how the characters were interpreted and the acting, so it was pretty good. And then on Sunday, I started Ice Fantasy, which is a Chinese fantasy television series that aired in 2016. It's about two tribes in the immortal world, the Fire and Ice tribe and their eternal conflict. The prince of the Fire tribe is assassinated, which gives the Fire King an excuse to declare war on the Ice tribe. There's betrayal, there's love, there's battles. It's just amazing. I've watched so far the first 5 episodes out of a total of like 60. So I'm planning on continuing with Ice Fantasy, like maybe 4 or 5 episodes every Sunday until I finish. But so far I'm really enjoying it. It is a blast. Anyway, so let's move on to the books, because I've spent 9 minutes talking about movies and and y'all want to watch. I should be talking about books. Sorry about that. So moving on to the books I've read. So I've read The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. It's enjoyable in parts and not too enjoyable in other parts. I mentioned last week, and I think several times subsequently, that I have a hard time with The Lord of the Rings. It's my relationship with the book is unsettled. I think there are brilliant bits, and I think there are bits where, honestly, where was an editor? Just, it is overwritten, it is plotting, yeah. But I think the important thing to remember is that a lot of what appears to be the book's faults is that Tolkien is aiming for a classic vibe. Sort of 19th century adventure novels, but also, say, Le Morte d'Arthur, The Fairy Queen, these great old epics. And I think to a large extent he is playing sort of a bit of a game. The prologue, I think, really should be more of an introduction, because it very much reads in a way like the introduction to a Penguin classic or any sort of reissue of a classic work of literature. They almost always have some form of explanatory introductory essay. And I think the prologue can be read in a way like that. I mean, this long, involved explanation of the hobbits. And then at the end of the book, with this long appendix, again can be viewed as explanatory essays. But I agree with Steve and David Murphy's criticisms of The Lord of the Rings in their videos last week or earlier this week, because I think they were on Sunday. Maybe it was Sunday. Yeah, I think it was Sunday. Could have been Saturday though, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Where, I mean, there are certain like plot holes. I mean, Steve pointed out, well, why didn't they just get rid of it at the time? Why didn't they just take it from Isildur and toss it in there? Heck, why didn't they just toss Isildur into it? Into Mount Doom? But then there wouldn't have been a book. But I think it does start very slowly. I mean, it takes 3 chapters to really get going, and then more chapters. It's, yeah. So, yeah. So, I'm glad I reread it, but I didn't necessarily enjoy the experience all that much. I know that saying that as a fantasy fan is... But like I said last week, I do think The Lord of the Rings has, for the most part, been superseded in a lot of ways by more contemporary fantasy novels. Maybe in the only could possibly be world building, but I think maybe even there he could have been superseded in the last 60 years, almost certainly. So after finishing The Lord of the Rings, I started on a history book. This is the Franco-Prussian War, the German conquest of France in 1870 to 1871 by Geoffrey Wawro. This book has been one of my books I've been obsessed with for quite some time. I was a member of the History Book Club in the early 2000s when I was in undergrad. I mean, I think this was one of the first books I did. They have basically you can pick like 4 or 5 books for a few dollars, and then they'll basically charge you for like books you don't like. There's book of the month or the spotlight book that they'll send you unless you tell them you don't want it. So, yeah, I had this and I read it and quite enjoyed it. I think after I purged it from my collection for some stupid reason, of course, most of my purges are stupid, even if it's to get something else. I think I tried to interlibrary loan this a few times from my local library, but I've always wanted it back into my collection, and I finally got around to rereading it after maybe about 5 or more years. I still quite enjoy it, although I I'm a bit more critical of it now than I was when I first read it. I don't think Wawro does much justice for the French. He really portrays them as rather plodding and foolish and just like snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. And I think ultimately more could have been done, and I think probably more should have been written about really the French and their psychology and their political considerations. Certainly something was going on with Marshal Bazaine. I'm probably butchering his name. Whether it was rivalry with Napoleon III or the other Chief General McMahon, or if it was some kind of wanting to play a political game after the war. I don't know, but I think more could have been done. And I think generally probably the war could have been a larger book looking at more than just the minutia, the strategy, tactics of the battles. But yeah, so anywho, but the book has, I think, ignited an interest in this period in European history, and I will probably be looking for more books on the Franco-Prussian War and more on Europe in general, the unification of Germany, the Third Republic, biographies of the people involved. So yeah, ooh, that was giving my arm a workout, but yeah, I still enjoyed it. But I think more attention could have been paid to other aspects of the war. So moving on to what I want to watch and read this coming weekend and into the following week, I'll go with the books first. So the book I'm going to be starting this weekend will be A History of the World with the Women Put Back In by Kersten and Daenschel. Hoping I pronounced both names correctly. I bought this a few months ago from Book Depository, and I rather quite like um, the desk jacket's design, the overall design of the book. I quite like it, and I am rather excited to get around to reading it. And depending when I finish off A History of the World with the Women Put Back In, I plan to start on A Hero Born, the first volume in the Legends of the Condor Heroes by Jin Yang. This is a Chinese historical fantasy novel, wuxia genre, of the beginnings of the Mongol conquest of China. And I read this like a year or two ago and quite enjoyed it. I haven't gotten around to rereading A Hero Board or the follow-up books. I kind of wanted to try to complete the first part of the series. So the Legend of the Condor Heroes series is really three really long, epic historical fantasies, or wuxia. Basically, wuxia as a genre is about martial artists, and their feats are usually superhuman at best, outright magical, or like either superhuman, slightly superhuman, to outright magical. And I am looking forward to rereading A Hero Born. Now, as for um, my viewing this week, after I upload this, I plan on starting Asian Street Food. It's a short one season series looking at different cities in Asia and what foods they have on the street, like in the food carts and food vans and that sort of thing. Um, I think maybe playing off of what Anthony Bourdain mentioned several times in his various uh, TV series, No Reservations and Parts Unknown, where for him, a lot of the best food in the places he travels to are the foods on the street, on in these little stalls and food trucks, and yeah. So looking forward to it. I think I might have actually watched it before, but I don't, because it looks like it has those little red bars that show I've watched it, but I don't remember having watched it. So yeah. And then tomorrow I plan on starting The Punisher, the Marvel MCU, well, the Netflix Marvel MCU uh, collaboration that ultimately sputtered out. I've been told this is the best of the um, Netflix MCU series, so I'm looking forward to checking it out and seeing where it goes. And then on Sunday, I plan on continuing with Ice Fantasy, and I'll update you next weekly reads on how they go and stuff. So I think that's about it. Although the next time you see me for weekly reads, this will probably be different. But anyway, so until then, I will see you on Monday, hopefully. And have a great weekend and stay safe. Thank you, BookTube.